Hello my gorgeous makeup loving friends, welcome back to another Swatching Sundays. This is a weekly episode where I take an eyeshadow palette or any sort of a makeup product and I swatch it in lots of different lighting conditions to look at things like its buildability, what's the level of pigment, what's the level of sparkle, etc. and how does it look at various levels of depth of lighting and saturation, etc. So this week I'm looking at the Cosmic Brushes The Lovers palette. It's relatively new, it's only come out in the last 2 weeks. So I'm swatching this, as I said, across lots of different lighting conditions. However, I've also kind of been tweaking around the format ever so slightly to try and figure out exactly what it is that I want to do with this series. It's always a bit of an evolution, and a massive thank you to Terry who actually recommended blending out some of the shades with brushes. That has now been included, and I'm also checking to see how much certain shadows might actually stain and how they might actually combine with others. And I'm also now looking at what some of these look like when they're added on top of an actual eyeshadow primer. So I'm really trying to give as much depth and understanding to this as possible. It is a very affordable indie brand, but hey, let's not spend money unless we absolutely need to. So if you are looking for an in-depth, not quite a review, but an overview as to what this palette looks like and how it performs, then this is the video for you. Do please keep on watching. What I find quite interesting about this palette is that it's essentially organised into quints. We have a 5-pan here of some pinks, a 5-pan of neutrals, 5-pan of greens and 5-pan of blues. So I kind of want to swatch these so that I keep them within their respective colour groupings. At least that's the hope. We have our first row here, which is a mix of the pinks and the greens. And this first shade here, Connection, it's a duochrome and it goes from this beautiful yellowy green to pink. And you can kind of see it there on the camera. It's very much reading as pink, but just as an FYI here, I can see the flip and hopefully we'll see it later on in the video. The kind of metallic-y duochrome is really nice, really smooth. And the mattes that we're looking at here, again, very creamy, very easy to work with. You can tell they're not very dry. So we have Connection, and you can see there, like that's a one swipe thing. Unconditional, now that's quite pale, so as you guys know, I will build that up. We have Promise and Trust. We're on to our next row and you can see there's a nice mixture here between the mattes and the more metallic-y shades. Now this shade is very, very hard to formulate. It's a very pastel sort of a green, and I will say not as dry as I thought it was going to be, because normally when you go this pastel it just ends up being more dry, but this is a lot creamier than I would have expected. It'll be interesting to see the degree of fallout and the degree of buildability here. We have Attraction, Choices, Devoted, so that's the very pale green one. It does look though like it builds quite nicely, and Communication. We're now on to our third row, so we're a little over halfway there, and this row has all mattes. Now I have kind of swatched these slightly out of order just because I want to keep them in their colour groups. That was kind of what I had hoped. So we have Harmony here, and that's the last of the pinky purple family. Now this is swatching a little bit patchily, but that kind of happens with purples, so I'm definitely going to make sure that I have a little look at that one to see how that blends. We then have Self Love, which is one of the neutrals. Again, a little bit patchy, but these are very, very buildable, so I don't mind that too much. We have Mutual, that's going on quite nicely, and Partnership. I will say I have a little bit of staining on my fingers, so it's going to be really interesting to see what the story is when I actually do the full swipe to test for staining. In terms of purple and those kind of mattes, they did feel a little bit grittier than what I'm used to, so I thought that was important to point out. We have our penultimate row, and I do want to point out that pale blue there, the level of pigment on that, because as I've said before, getting a pastel sort of a shade and getting it to that level of pigment, very, very difficult to do, so kudos. We have Faithful, Affection, Truth, and Values. And we now have our very, very last row. We have Soulmate, Companion, Commitment, and Loyal. And that's the whole palette swatched. I obviously tried to keep it according to its colour grouping. I will say that black, very, very pigmented. I was quite impressed with that. A few of these are a little bit more dry than I would have thought, but I've never really had any issue with their matte formula before, so it'll be really interesting to see what the story is when I put it onto a primer and kind of blend it out a little bit further. But let's actually get towards removing the stencil and seeing what it all looks like, because for me, I find that extremely satisfying. And you can see here just a really beautiful colour story, like all of the shades put together. You have that lovely romantic feel here. Now, as it is, I have a ring light at a 90-degree angle and I have 2 box lights. So we have quite a bit of light here, but I do still feel like those pale shades, the Devoted, Unconditional and Values and even Affection, they're coming out very, very pigmented even in this condition. The kind of shades that aren't kind of maybe translating as well are the shimmers, but that's kind of standard here. So the next thing that I'm going to do is obviously add in some more light so we can get more information here as to what this might look like if you were going to go on stage, for example. I've now added in the overhead light, and again you can really see those pastels. My goodness, can I just say, I remember when pastels first came out, like as being big, I'd say maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Probably the biggest one was Kat Von D at the time did the pastel goth, and it was so hard to get some decent pastel formulas. And look at how far we've come, where indie brands like this are just really knocking it out of the park. That even though I have this crazy light saturation, you're still seeing them performing really, really nicely. And again, even those multi-chromes, those duochromes, those shimmers, they're really showing off themselves quite well here. Obviously, they're much better in darker sort of situations so that you can see the sparkle. But I feel like even here you can see that although this is a very muted colour story, it's very romantic, that's the whole point of it, it is still appropriate for stage work if that's what you were looking for. Anyways, let's get to the next bit and start decreasing the amount of light here so that we can see the full extent of the sparkles. We now have a minimal amount of light. It's literally just the ring light at a 90-degree angle, and I do feel like the shimmers are starting to come into their own here. As I'm sitting here and looking at the top shade, which is Connection, that sort of duochrome, I can see the flips, but obviously on the camera it's more picking up as pink, and I'm hoping across a couple more lighting conditions we might pick up on those just a smidgen better. But a lot of these I think would be beautiful as sort of topper shades, which again we're going to explore a little bit later. Just very, very pretty, but obviously this is my next favourite condition where we get rid of the lights completely and get a little bit spooky. And there we go, I've added in the torchlight here and you can really see the sparkles here. They are looking so pretty, or maybe it's just me. Feel free to disagree. You're wrong and I'm right, but there you go. Let's look at that top shade there, Connection. Look at how sparkly that is. Oh my goodness. And you have to remember this is quite an affordable indie brand, but they've really kind of come at it with some great formulas here. And again, like I said, I appreciate that it's essentially 4 little palettes almost in one. I think that's so clever and it's done so beautifully. I'm just trying to make sure that I can capture it as well as I possibly can. Oh, it's just so lovely. But yeah, you can really see the sparkles here. Like even there with the blue. Some of them definitely hit you a little bit more, like that shade Connection. But my goodness, they are a thing of beauty. But obviously I want to check this across some more conditions, including things like my mobile phone, so that we can see that with a little bit more information. So that is our next condition. And this is it obviously with a phone camera. For full reference, I'm using an iPhone 14. Now let's do the weird thing of getting up close and personal, and you can really see the sparkles in those top 2 shades. I think they're probably the most interesting out of all of the shimmery shades. The mattes are really holding their own there, and even those bottom ones, they're beautiful. I feel like they function a little bit more as toppers, like that sort of a grey. Beautiful. I love the kind of combination of the blues with the black. Like to me, that kind of makes sense as a very comprehensive sort of a color story. And here you can kind of see that pink is turning a little bit more like kind of lilac-y blue. There's a bit of lavender almost to it. Oh, they're so beautiful. It's just a really nicely curated colour story, at least in my opinion. Feel free to disagree, because obviously we don't all have to love the same things. But I think it turned out really nicely. Now, obviously, I have a few more conditions to do to kind of put it through its paces and see exactly what's going on. So we're going to look at this now in a non-direct light. So basically just hanging out in the hallway and just seeing what it's like when we have no light on it. And here I'm in non-direct light, but do you see that shade here at the very top, connection? Look at that. That had previously appeared to be very pink, but here it's looking much more blue to purple. And you can see it has almost like a transparency base in some ways, but definitely much more blue leaning here. So thankfully I'm getting to show you that. There aren't really many other duochromes within this palette, which you kind of expect given the price point. But the sparkles in and of itself, beautiful. Look at that shade. Sorry, I know I keep coming back to it, but it's my channel and I can do what I want. And you just have to look at it and be okay with it, or just X out of the video because nobody's forcing you to be here. Unless they are, in which case I'm very sorry. That's a very unique torture method. And now I'm in indirect light, so I'm literally just at the window. There's no sunlight today. I mean, I say it pretty much every week, but are you surprised it's Ireland? That's how it is. This is how I maintain that beautiful, beautiful tuberculosis sort of a physicality. It's just very pale, very waxen, very discomforting. But you can see there, they are very, very pretty, even in this lighting. And let's be real, that's how a lot of us are going to be wearing it. We're not going to be under studio lighting. We're just going to wander around, living our best lives in dim lighting with minimal outside exposure. And I feel like this palette is really, really good for that. But we are going to go outside. I would like to say in direct sunlight, but no. Again, some daylight, sort of. We'll see. We'll try our best. And as you can see, there's absolutely no direct sunlight, but you can still see the sparkles pretty well. And right now I'm filming this on a Canon, so I'm going to show it obviously to you on a camera phone. My goodness, my brain is falling apart like wet pieces of cake. Oh my god, is the sun coming out? It's happening. Oh my god, guys, it's happening. The actual sunlight is coming out. Ah, it's happening. It's very exciting. So we can actually see it now in sunlight. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Allah, Vishnu, whoever. I'm not a very religious person. But thank you. Hooray, we can see it now. And yeah, you can see very, very pretty. Very, very sparkly. And yes, I am that white. It's terrifying. Oh, beautiful. But I'll obviously show it now on the camera phone as well. And you're probably sitting there saying, Teresa, this doesn't even count as sunlight. Well, lucky you to be living in a country where you have actual sunlight. Because for me, this is practically splitting the stones. Like, this is sunshine. And you can see the shift there on that shade. Sorry, I keep trying to show it to you. I just find it interesting. But yeah, actual little bit of sunlight. It's very exciting for all of us here. We might get a barbecue out. I'm joking. It's still like 8 degrees, but, you know. Celsius, by the way, in case you're wondering. I don't know what Fahrenheit is. I mean, I know it's a temperature system, but I don't understand the conversion score. It seems very strange to me. But anyways, that's what it looks like there. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. But we're obviously going to go in and see what it's like in terms of staining, blendability, and just what it's like when we're mixing things about. So now we've seen this palette outside and somewhat in daylight, but I want to see what the story is in terms of staining here. So I do have a makeup wipe here. Now it is a little bit dirty, etc., because I've been using that throughout, but let's see what the story is here in terms of any sort of staining. Place your bets now, my babies, and we'll see. Now, that sort of purple shade, it is showing a little bit of resistance. Nothing major. But for us paler people, you may want to be aware of that. It could affect you. But with enough love, you can see it does somewhat disappear. Now, my skin goes straight to pink of like any sort of pressure being put on it. So you do see, hopefully there, that it won't stain you. So very good for those of us who may have slightly more sensitive skin. But I did want to talk about and explore the blendability of some of these things. And I've been saying before about how it's a bit unfair because I'm not using primers. But I'm going to use primers this time because I feel like this is going to give us a little bit more information. So I have my MAC paint pot in Sink to a Whisper, and I'm going to put a few little bits of these down so that we can see what the story is here, just to get a little bit more information, because you know what I'm like, lads. Let's just get that on in there. Now you can see there's a little bit of stain in there with that purple, which is the shade Harmony. So please do keep that in mind. I wouldn't be 100% confident in saying it's not going to stain you. Now, full disclosure, I don't really care if something stains me. It's not a big deal to me. But I know that for some people, it's a major issue. So I have a couple of blending brushes here, and I figure I am going to take my Zoeva 235 or 225. Yeah, there we go. And I'm going to go into the shade Harmony. And this is simply because I find this brush is brilliant for blending out deeper shades. And I want to see about tapping it on and seeing what the story is in terms of blendability. Let's just see. High level of pigment straight away. I am just tapping it on. This is my general preference. I apologize if you do your things in a different way. This is just my own personal preference. And then just do a little swishy swishy. I just figured this is a better way to do it than trying to blend it across the stencils, because the stencils do interfere to some degree with determining how well something can blend. And I thought this might be a slightly more accurate way of looking at it. Look at how it just blends into my veins. I'm very sorry for anyone who has an aversion to wrists. I'm not keen on wrists myself, but we do what we can. Relatively blendable. I wouldn't say it's the most blendable, but I'm also horribly, and I mean this, horribly impatient. I don't want to sit here for 5 years blending and blending and blending. But you can see it does blend out, right? You can get it to blend out. You're not getting majorly harsh lines. It's very easy to work with right there. So I'm quite happy with that. That seems like a pretty nice one. Hooray, very, very happy to see that. I might take another one here. I have a Sigma E25, and I might try Devoted, which is that pale green. I'm being really unfair. I'm going in with some tricky colours here, and I'm just going to pat it in. I'd say this is one of those ones that you have to build up ever so slightly. But with the white base, it's popping pretty nicely. So no major issues in terms of getting the pigment. I will say, obviously with this shade, your base is going to be really, really important. The primer that you're using here is, I don't want to say going to be crucial, but it is. Like, it is an important one. I'm not going to BS you here and be like, oh no, it'll be fine. Just use it whatever you feel like. No, absolutely not. Get a good primer, right? That'll make your life a lot easier. But you can see it is blending pretty well. No major issues here, getting a nice level of pigment. So I'm personally quite happy with it. I'm gonna try a good few of these from the Colour Stories. I want to try Partnership here, which is that dark blue, because I had a little bit of staining from that on my fingers, but it didn't seem to stain my arm. And by the way, I'm just using a colour drain brush. You can't get these anymore because colour drain doesn't exist. It's a very sad existence that beautiful things die, but it is what it is. So this one, high pigment. Again, just swirling it around, seeing what the story is here. And you can already see there, blending very, very quickly. So I'm personally quite happy to see that. It does look, oh, look at that. See, even just along there, you can see the extent to which it's blending out. Very easy to work with. Hooray, we love that. And by we, I mean me. Because really, isn't that all that matters? And actually, do you know what? I'm going to be even more of a B1TCH. I'm going to take this Cosmic Brushes one, CB4. It feels fair to do that. And I'm going to go into the shade Mutual. And I want to just tap that there. onto that shade Devoted and see how well does that mesh and blend with that. Or are we going to get any sort of harsh lines? What's the story there, Morning Glory? I think I've made this into a really weird series now. But I'm hoping that it does help you guys, because I mean, there's so many brands that come out with things and it can be difficult to determine what our money is best spent on. And for me, things like blendability, pigmentation, etc. are some of the biggest sort of factors here. And again, I've said this since its inception, since this section got added. Massive thank you to Terry. This was her idea. I hugely appreciate it. And I think you can see there, look at the way that those two are blending. Very, very seamless. So I'm exceptionally happy about that. You can really see that there. And I'm going to be mean again. And I'm going to take a blank canvas, and I'm going to go into Unconditional. And I want to tap that just there and see, can I blend that out further? I know, I'm a die awful cruel. Poor Faye, who is the brand owner, I don't know if she'll ever see this, but she'll probably be like, what on earth is this absolute idiot doing? Look, I don't know, Faye. I don't know what I'm doing. Do any of us know what we're doing? Because I feel like we don't. And it's okay if we don't know what we're doing. Look at how the two of those mix. I don't know about you, but to me, that's a really big indicator. Like, I love seeing that. Oh, Jesus, let's just go for it. What other ones do we have? Let's try that black. We need to have a good, solid black. And that is a very deep pigmented black. And I want to see what that's like. How does that blend? Have I gone a little bit OTT? Yeah, but you know what? I think it's the academic in me that I'm like, it's better if we just go a little bit off the rails and go at this a little bit harder than we necessarily needed to. And you can see there, I didn't have to put a lot of pigmentation down, like I didn't put a lot of product, but we're getting a lot of pigment. Now let's add a little bit more because we can. Not a huge amount of fallout either. I haven't tapped off excess, so I haven't even done this the way that I would normally do it. So I'm being extra unfair. I am a cruel taskmaster. But look at that. That is looking really, really nicely. Now, I haven't actually looked at any of these in terms of their blendability, the kind of more metallic-y shades. So let's try the shade Faithful. I'm taking this up on a Cash Beauty brush and I'm going to stamp that. Stimpity stamp, because why not? It's my channel, I can do what I like. And again, this is blending no problem. It's coming out beautifully. No harsh lines. And I'm being very unfair with this one because I didn't put down a glitter primer. So I'm a horrible person, but you know what, could be worse. And I think I'll just take one more, maybe Connection, because that one is really, really interesting and I can see a lot of people hitting pan on that. Let's try that with, by the way, it's a Sigma E36. I love the Sigma brushes. Can you tell? And this one takes a little bit of building, which is fine. That's not normally how you put it on anyways. I just want to see how it's blending. And you wouldn't normally stamp on with like a blending brush anyway. I'm being like really pedantic. But nice and smooth. Nothing major here. Okay, that's looking good. The next thing, I'm sorry, this is being overly thorough probably at this point, but we want to see what some of these look like when we're tapping on other shades. So I want to take the shade Loyal here. It's kind of that really nice sparkly grey. And I want to tap it onto the black. That's kind of the obvious thing that you think to tap it onto. And maybe Promise, I might tap that on to the green. Just see what that looks like. And I'll tap Companion on here just to see what that looks like. And what else? I feel like there's more. Truth. Let's try Truth here on top of that. That's normally how I do it, just tippity-tappity it out. Yeah, so that's what it looks like. Obviously, I have a lot of lights on right now. I have a ring light and I have 2 box lights, but I'm going to do the standard thing of just getting rid of all of the lights so that we can look at this a little bit better. So obviously I didn't kind of tap these on in the same way as I did with the others, but look at that level of sparkle that you're still managing to get. Like, that is so effective. Again, no glitter primer. I literally tapped it on. I didn't swipe it on in the way that I did before. So even the technique is a little bit different. But look at the way that they're interacting there. You can really see the blendability of these as well and how well they mesh with those shadows. So I'm hoping, again, this is showing you how versatile this is, if that's what you're looking for. For me, that's what I tend to be looking for. But yeah, that's essentially it. I feel like we've put this palette through the ringer to really kind of explore it, and I'm really hoping that that's helpful to you guys. How sad was it about how excited I got about there being like a smidgen of sun? Like it's really bad. It's very grey here at the moment. I don't know how we're not all vitamin D deficient. I mean, we technically are. Like, it's a whole thing. But anyways, we have finished swatching this, and we've also looked at its blendability and how well it mixes with the other shades within this palette. I have to say, this is really, really nice. And I know that initially some of these kind of looked a little bit patchy, etc., when being packed on with the finger. But you could see even when I was looking at them blending via brush, perfect. There was absolutely no issue. So for me, I know this isn't quite a review because I haven't used it on the eyes, but I feel like I've put it through enough of its paces to get a decent inclination as to what this is like. Brilliant value for money, absolutely gorgeous. I personally like this colour story. Does it have as many like special shades in it as I might like? No, but the special shades that are there are properly special. They're not stuff that I've seen in other palettes. So I personally feel like this is pretty darn good. Now, I've talked about the brand before, Cosmic Brushes. My gorgeous friend Tia actually has a code. It's Tia10. It'll get you 10% off. So if you haven't gotten this and have been on the fence and kind of gone, oh, I don't really know, and you would now like to purchase it, you can use her code. It'll get you some money off, etc. But if on the other hand, you're sitting there and you're now thinking, oh, I think I might actually be able to dupe this from my collection, fantastic. That is part of what this series is all about, to kind of help you to make some informed decisions, so we don't just go off and buy everything. Let me be the silly goose who goes off and purchases things. But my gorgeous friends, that is it. Thank you so much for watching. Do please like, comment and subscribe. Turn on that notification bell, and do please share, because sharing is caring, except of course for STDs, in which case just wrap it up. Don't be gross. But that's it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.